What would you do if a complete stranger showed up at your door, smiled like they were your best friend, and tried to buy your home like they were picking out a new handbag? I wasn't looking to sell my grandmother's house. Hell, I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do with it yet. But the moment Karen Davis stepped onto my porch, I knew she had already decided for me. It had been a few months since my grandmother passed away, leaving me the old house just outside the city. It wasn't anything fancy, but it had character, the kind of place that smelled like old books and fresh coffee, with a wraparound porch that creaked underfoot and oak trees that had been there longer than I had been alive. Every time I thought about leaving, I heard my grandmother's voice in the back of my mind, telling me to take care of the place. So, for now, I stayed. That's when she showed up. I was outside clearing out some of the overgrown bushes when a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb, the kind of car that probably cost more than my entire house. The door swung open, and out stepped a woman who looked like she had never stepped on a patch of dirt in her life. White slacks, a matching blazer, blonde hair pulled into a flawless bun, and nails painted that kind of glossy red that screamed expensive. She saw me and smiled like she had just found something she had been searching for. "You must be Evan," she said, walking toward me with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. I wiped my hands on my jeans, already feeling uneasy. "Yeah, can I help you?" She extended a perfectly manicured hand, but when I didn't immediately shake it, she let it drop. "Karen Davis," she said smoothly. "I own several properties in this neighborhood, and I heard this house recently changed ownership. I wanted to see if you'd be interested in selling." Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the house like a hawk sizing up its prey. I didn't even need to think about it. "It's not for sale." Her smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. "Oh, I understand. But let's be realistic, Evan. This house is old. The market is hot. And I'm prepared to offer you a deal you won't want to refuse." I crossed my arms. "I appreciate the offer, but like I said, it's not for sale." Karen let out a small, condescending laugh. "Come now, everyone has a price. How about double the market value? I can pay in cash, no inspections, no delays." That's when it hit me. This woman wasn't just another real estate investor. She was a shark, and sharks don't take no for an answer. "Karen, I'm not interested," I said, turning back toward the house. "Have a good day." I barely made it up the porch steps before her voice hardened. "You're making a mistake, Evan." I turned back, and the fake charm was gone. Her eyes were cold, her smile erased. "This neighborhood is changing," she continued, her voice smooth but laced with warning. "Old houses like this, they don't belong here anymore. I'm offering you a way out before things get complicated." A chill ran down my spine, but I forced myself to hold my ground. "Complicated how?" She tilted her head, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Oh, you know," she said lightly. "New developments bring new people. New rules. It'd be a shame if this house became a problem in the middle of all that." I didn't reply. I just watched as she turned on her heel, walked back to her car, and drove off, tires screeching just a little louder than necessary. For the next week, I tried to push the conversation out of my mind. Maybe she was bluffing, just another developer trying to intimidate me into selling. Maybe she was all talk. But then the real trouble started. At first, I convinced myself that Karen's threat had been nothing more than an intimidation tactic, a desperate attempt to scare me into selling. But the longer I stayed, the clearer it became that she hadn't been bluffing. The first sign was subtle. A black sedan parked down the street, engine running. At first, I thought it belonged to a neighbor or maybe a friend visiting someone nearby. But when I stepped outside to take the trash out, the car immediately pulled away. A coincidence, I told myself. The second time it happened, I wasn't so sure. Then came the letters. Typed. No return address. Short messages printed in bold, sterile font. The smart choice is to sell. Think about your future. This house isn't worth the trouble. Every few days, another one would appear in my mailbox, always waiting for me in the morning, like clockwork. There was no stamp, no sign of a postal worker delivering them. Someone was putting them there by hand. Then things escalated. One afternoon, a city inspector knocked on my door, clipboard in hand. He introduced himself as Harold Green, said there had been concerns raised about my property. Something about structural integrity, potential hazards, zoning compliance. I stood there, dumbfounded, as he walked around my house, taking notes like he already had his mind made up. I asked him who had reported these so-called concerns. He just shrugged. We investigate all complaints thoroughly. He spent nearly an hour documenting every detail, the foundation, the porch, the electrical wiring, the trees near the house. By the time he left, he had a list of potential violations that could require expensive repairs. That night, I couldn't sleep. I had a feeling I already knew who was behind it. Then, at 2 a.m., the sirens came. The flashing red and blue lights splashed against my bedroom walls as I bolted upright, my heart hammering. I stumbled to the front door and saw 2 police cruisers parked outside. My stomach dropped when I spotted Karen standing with the officers, arms crossed, a delicate look of concern on her face. I stepped outside, barely keeping my frustration in check. "Sir," one of the officers said, "we received a report of a possible disturbance here." I blinked. What disturbance? I was asleep. Karen let out a dramatic sigh, shaking her head. "I'm so sorry to involve law enforcement, but I've been trying to reach Evan for days. I made him a generous offer for his home, and he's become increasingly aggressive every time I try to talk to him. Frankly, I'm afraid for my safety." My jaw clenched. She was lying right to their faces. "I haven't spoken to her since she showed up uninvited on my property," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "She's the one harassing me, not the other way around." The officers exchanged glances, clearly unsure who to believe. Karen placed a hand on her chest, feigning offense. "I understand emotions run high when it comes to real estate, but I just want what's best for this neighborhood. I even considered offering Evan a job managing properties, so he wouldn't be left struggling. I'm trying to help, and all I get in return are threats." I almost laughed out loud at how effortlessly she twisted the situation. She was setting the stage, planting the idea that I was the problem. One of the officers turned back to me. "Look, there's no crime here, but property disputes can escalate. I'd advise you both to keep communication civil." I wanted to scream. Karen had gotten exactly what she wanted, not an arrest, not yet, but a seed of doubt in the police's mind. If she called them again, they'd already have a record of prior issues. She turned to me with a tight, smug smile. "I really hope we can resolve this peacefully, Evan. I'd hate for things to get worse." She didn't wait for a response. She walked back to her car, heels clicking against the pavement, and drove off. I stood there watching her leave, the weight of something much bigger than I had anticipated settling onto my shoulders. She had just made her first move. And I knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to a letter taped to my front door. Thick paper, official looking, with the bold, unmistakable header, Homeowners Association Violation Notice. I didn't even belong to the HOA. My grandmother's house had been here long before Karen and her people decided this neighborhood was prime for their developments. Yet, here it was, a formal warning stating that my house was not in compliance with community standards. I tore the envelope open, scanning the nonsense inside. Apparently, my property had been voted as a community concern due to outdated structures, non-uniform aesthetics, and overgrown landscaping. The solution? I had 30 days to either complete mandatory renovations, at my own expense, or sell the property to a qualifying buyer for a quick resolution. It didn't take a genius to figure out who that qualifying buyer was. I gritted my teeth and marched back inside, dialing my lawyer, Julia Whitman, as I slammed the letter down on the kitchen counter. When she picked up, I could already hear the exhaustion in her voice, like she knew what was coming. "Tell me Karen didn't just try to make you part of the HOA," she said. "Oh, it's worse than that," I muttered, reading through the fine print. "Apparently, my house is lowering neighborhood value, and I have a month to fix it or get out." I heard the sound of papers shuffling on her end before she sighed. "She's pulling the same stunt she's done before, claiming an old HOA jurisdiction that doesn't actually apply to your property. It's total fraud, but it's enough to make your life hell while we fight it. I'll file an injunction, but be prepared for this to drag out." I had barely hung up the phone when my security system sent an alert to my phone. Motion detected. I clicked the app open, and my stomach dropped. There was a man in a dark hoodie standing in my driveway. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, staring at my house. After a few moments, he turned and walked off, disappearing down the street. By the time I got outside, he was gone. But he wanted me to see him. That night, it happened again. This time, someone knocked, just once, at my front door at 2 a.m. I bolted upright in bed, every nerve in my body on high alert. Peeking through the blinds, I saw no one, but the air felt thick, electric, like I wasn't alone. The next morning, I found a fresh noise complaint filed against me. According to the police report, I had been playing loud music and shouting profanities at an absurd hour. I wasn't surprised when I scrolled back through my security footage and saw nothing but silence. Karen was turning up the pressure. Days later, I walked out to find my garage door vandalized. Someone had spray-painted "Sell or Suffer" in bold, uneven letters. I documented everything. Took pictures, saved video clips, filed another police report. But I could already hear the dismissal in the officer's voice. Without a suspect, there's not much we can do. Karen wanted me gone, and if I didn't leave voluntarily, she was determined to make my life unbearable. Then came the property tax reassessment. The letter from the city stated that my home's tax value had suddenly increased by over 30% due to development potential in the area. That meant my property taxes were going to skyrocket, an intentional financial burden designed to force my hand. That's when Julia called with even worse news. Karen had filed a lawsuit against me. Her claim? That I was devaluing the neighborhood and causing financial loss to other homeowners. She was demanding that I either bring my house up to modern standards or sell it to someone who would. I laughed bitterly as I skimmed the paperwork. It was so absurd, so blatantly corrupt, but I knew the game she was playing. She didn't care if she won. She just wanted to bury me in legal fees until I couldn't afford to fight back. I looked around the house, my grandmother's house. The creaky porch, the familiar scent of old wood and coffee, the warmth that still lingered in every corner. This wasn't just about a property dispute anymore. Karen wanted me to break. But I wasn't going anywhere. The lawsuit was the last straw. Karen had spent weeks throwing everything she had at me, fake violations, legal loopholes, and intimidation tactics, but this was her biggest play yet. She wanted to drag me into an endless legal battle, drain my time, my money, and my sanity until I gave up and handed her my house on a silver platter. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to make sure the entire city saw exactly what kind of person she was. I spent the next few nights digging through every document, every complaint, every ridiculous citation she had weaponized against me. I compiled photos of the vandalism, security footage of the strange cars lurking outside my home, police reports dismissing my harassment claims, and the letters from the city citing sudden property tax reassessments and bogus zoning violations. Every single piece of paper had one thing in common: Karen Davis. I needed a way to make the public care. That's when I reached out to Lisa Hartman, a journalist known for exposing corruption and corporate abuse. I sent her a summary of what was happening, attached every document I had, and waited. I expected a polite dismissal, maybe a vague, "we'll look into it." Instead, she called me within an hour. "This isn't just a real estate dispute," she said, her voice sharp with interest. "This is a blueprint for how developers force people out of their homes. If what you're saying is true, Karen's been doing this for years." The first article dropped that Sunday. It detailed my case, the forced inspections, the anonymous threats, the vandalism, the lawsuit, and connected it to other homeowners in the area who had mysteriously chosen to sell after similar pressures. Karen's name wasn't mentioned outright, but it didn't have to be. Anyone following the neighborhood's recent development surge could read between the lines. The reaction was immediate. The HOA message boards exploded with heated debates and growing suspicion. Neighbors who had once avoided eye contact with me now approached cautiously, murmuring that they'd had a bad feeling about this whole thing for a while. Some whispered their own stories of sudden HOA violations and mysteriously rising property taxes. And Karen? She responded exactly how I expected, with threats. A cease and desist letter arrived at my door the next day, accusing me of spreading false and defamatory information and demanding a public retraction. She wasn't scared of me, she was scared of losing control of the narrative. Then she made a mistake. I don't know if it was arrogance, frustration, or just a desperate need to silence me, but she sent an email. It was from a private address, but the wording was unmistakably hers. "You need to stop making trouble for yourself. The people you're upsetting have a lot more influence than you realize. Walk away now before you regret it." It wasn't just a threat. It was proof. I forwarded it to Lisa. Within 24 hours, the second article dropped, this time, with Karen's name printed in bold. The headline accused her of predatory real estate tactics, documented her history of forced buyouts, the legal loopholes she exploited, the HOA votes she manipulated, and now, with her own email as evidence, her direct attempts at intimidation. That's when things spiraled out of her control. Other homeowners came forward, some publicly, some anonymously, sharing eerily similar experiences. Inspections that came out of nowhere. Sudden property tax spikes. Hand-delivered letters urging them to reconsider selling. Some even admitted that they hadn't wanted to sell at all but were too exhausted, too overwhelmed, too scared to keep fighting. Karen wasn't just losing a legal battle. She was losing the trust of the very people she had been manipulating for years. The city announced that they were reviewing past zoning violations and HOA practices after receiving numerous complaints. Karen's business partners, once so eager to stand beside her, suddenly started distancing themselves. The pressure was building. Then, the real blow landed. Rob Langley, one of Karen's former business associates, came forward with documents proving Karen had been bribing city inspectors and pressuring officials to drive property values up. Emails, financial records, meeting transcripts, it was all there, in black and white. Karen tried to discredit him, claiming he was bitter over a failed business deal. But it was too late. The house of cards she had spent years carefully stacking was starting to collapse. Karen's downfall wasn't immediate, but once the cracks started forming, the whole foundation crumbled faster than even I expected. The city's investigation into zoning violations turned into a full-blown legal inquiry, uncovering dozens of homeowners who had mysteriously chosen to sell under pressure, many of whom had never spoken up before out of fear. The bogus citations, the manipulated HOA votes, the conveniently timed tax reassessments, it all traced back to her. She had spent years twisting the system to serve her, believing she was untouchable. But now, people were finally paying attention. Her former allies abandoned her one by one. Developers who once worked with her refused to take her calls. City officials who had been more than happy to look the other way suddenly had no memory of any deals with her. And when the final article dropped, detailing her involvement in bribery, harassment, and fraudulent real estate dealings, the fallout was swift and brutal. Karen retaliated the only way she knew how, by going nuclear. She filed a defamation lawsuit against me, demanding damages in the millions, claiming I had ruined her reputation and caused significant harm to her business. It might have been terrifying if I hadn't expected it. Julia, my lawyer, barely blinked. This is a bluff. She's drowning, and she thinks she can scare you into backing off. She has no case. She was right. By the time we got to court, the evidence against her was overwhelming. Her emails, her connections to city inspectors, the whistleblowers who had come forward, it was all laid out in front of a judge. And when the verdict came, Karen didn't just lose. She was utterly destroyed. Her assets were seized. Her business licenses were revoked. She was hit with multiple lawsuits from former homeowners who had been victims of her schemes. The city launched a criminal investigation into her financial dealings. And the final, poetic twist. She was forced to sell her own properties, including her house, to cover her legal fees. The neighborhood changed after that, but in a way Karen never intended. Without her influence, people stopped living in fear of their own HOA. The city started enforcing real regulations, instead of bending them for the highest bidder. And as for me? My house, my grandmother's house, was finally mine, free of Karen's shadow. One evening, I sat on the porch, the air quiet for the first time in weeks. I thought about everything Karen had tried to do, the lengths she had gone to just to take something that didn't belong to her. I wondered how many other people had faced the same battle, how many had lost because they didn't have the energy to fight back. What about you? Have you ever had to stand your ground against someone who thought they could take whatever they wanted? How did you fight back?